Well, greetings and salutations, good people of the internet. My name is Big Lou. Welcome to my workshop. A good buddy of mine makes handcrafted leather goods that he sells at craft shows, wallets and travel journals and things like that. He reached out to me and asked if I would be willing to make him some display stands that he can more, beautify his area for displaying the goods that he makes and sells. I said, absolutely. That sounds like a fun project. He gave me some dimensions on what we're going to be doing. He just wants something simple that's not going to take away from the aesthetic of the items that he's trying to sell. He also sells them online. I'll have a link to his website down in the description below. You can go check out some of the cool stuff that he makes and maybe get yourself a wallet or a passport carrier or travel journal or something along those lines. This big piece of cherry would be a good place to start. We're going to go ahead and get over to the chop saw, and then we can continue on from there. Okay, this piece of cherry is very rough sawn, and it's still got some good thickness to it, which is much too thick for just some display shelves, which is a good thing. It's going to give us plenty of area to plane down to get to some real pretty. I see some really nice looking cathedraling in here, and it's going to be real pretty once we get it cleaned up. I'm going to start by chopping it to rough dimensions, a little bit over 18 inches, because he wants the final piece to be 18-inch display shelves. So we're going to do that, and then I'm going to use a sled through my planer to even it up. So you'll see what I'm talking about once we get to it, but let's start here.
Badges, jointer, we don't need no stinking jointer. Man, that is, love it.
Okay, so I've got them all milled down to rough dimensions. They're not at their final, it's not their final form just yet. It turns out they were not as cupped as I originally thought they were, so I didn't actually need to use my planer sled. But what I did use is this thin ripping jig on my table saw. There's a lot of videos out there that explain what this does. Basically, it just allows me to use the table saw to cut one edge of a board completely flush or even, so that, because I don't have a jointer, so I use this instead. If I did have a jointer, then, well, I'd probably lose a lot of you because you'd think I needed a whole shop full of tools in order to do that. This proves you don't, which is awesome. Anyway, so and now that I could see that they're milled to a better estimate of what they're going to turn out as, I realized that they're way too thick. You could see they're right about a full inch, and that's, for what I'm going for these shelves, is just going to be way too bulky. I almost said bulky, but it's not Perfect Strangers. Comment if you get that reference.
Of course I did, don't be ridiculous.
So off camera, I used some scrap half-inch pine material that I had from another project and just mocked up some, prototypes, if you will, just so that I can have something tangible in my hands to be like, oh, this is what it's going to look like if I was to resaw these 1-inch boards into 2 half-inch. That way I can double the material that I have and use the other 2 boards in another project, because my client wants 4 shelves. So I could take 2 of these, resaw them, and make the 4 shelves and use the other boards for something else. So I'm going to go ahead and head over to the bandsaw and resaw these. I have a bandsaw now. If you missed the video of us putting that together, the Lewis brothers, I'll have that video linked at the end of this one. It was a lot of fun to put that together. Again, big thanks to Chris and Jenny Davis, and of course to Jimmy DeResta. And if you're wondering why I'm thanking them, go check out that other video. Anyway, so these prototypes look pretty good to me, and let's go start doing some resawing. Hey, yo, what gives? Got a bone to pick with you, bro. Oh, really? You literally just told these people how much you appreciate them commenting that you don't need a shop full of tools to do these types of projects. And yet you immediately go to play with your little Band-Aid saw and that airplane thing. Well, first, it's a bandsaw and a planer. Second, what's your point? My point, dear brother, is that you are a hypocrite. Well, bro, had you waited until the next segment, you would have heard me mention that milling lumber like I'm doing is a luxury, and you don't have to have this type of equipment in order to make projects. You can buy pre-milled lumber at places like Woodcraft and Rockler. Hashtag not sponsored. Next segment, huh? All right. Yeah. Now go be a good little evil twin and tell these people to like, comment, and subscribe so that I can get back to work. You heard him. Like, comment, subscribe. Well, seeing as how that my brother and I stole my own thunder in the last segment, I will skip the part about telling you that you don't need a shop full of tools to get pre-milled lumber. You can go buy it from most home centers, any place that sells lumber, and obviously, as I mentioned, Rockler and Woodcraft. The next phase of what I'm going to do is these, because my planer has a helical head on it, these are incredibly smooth, but they're still not finished smooth. There's still a couple of lines on here, and seeing as how the angles that I have on these mock-ups that I did are going to be really hard to get in there with a sander after I put them together, I'm going to go ahead and sand these to their final sanding texture, final sanding grit, however you want to say it. Anyway, I'm going to sand them before I cut them up. That way I think it'll just make finishing them a lot easier once I actually go to start putting them together. So I'm going to head over to, well, okay, I'm not going to head over to anywhere. I'm going to stand here and sand these, and then I'm going to go to the table saw, cut them to their final width, and then split them into the dimensions so that we can finally glue them together. Enough talking, more working. Let's go. Okay, so we are all ready for the glue up here, and something that I always like to do, because you hear a lot of times people talking about how stressed they get over glue ups and stuff like that, and even though this is a pretty simple glue up, there's no like complex joinery in it, joinery or anything. I still like to set everything up in a dry fit, but also like to do a practice run so that I know exactly what I'm going to do, on how it's all going to go together, just so that I avoid any issues. And are these huge bar clamps that I've got set up overkill? Probably. But I think they're the best tool for what I'm trying to do, because the back piece is such a high vertical. If I use anything bigger than that, it could flex it over, and I don't want that. And having it set up with just these F-style clamps, I want it to be elevated a little bit so that everything is flush on the bottom. It'll make a lot more sense when you actually see what I'm doing, because I've already run through a practice glue up here. But anyway, let's get to work. Okay, so once I pulled them out of the clamps and the glue was all dry, well, check that, reverse it. Glue was dry and then I pulled them out of the clamps. Anyway, once that happened, I put them over here in my makeshift vise. I really need to get a bench vise. And used my block plane to just kind of smooth out the bottoms, because there was a little bit of unevenness down there. And now I'm gonna take some 120 grit sandpaper and just kind of smooth over the sharp edges. I don't want to put a round over on it just because it's too narrow of a piece to really do that safely, number one, because I don't have a router table. But number two, I really don't think it needs it. I just think some rounding it over with some sandpaper will be just fine. And then we can hit it with a couple of coats of spray lacquer and we will call these things done. Let's get to work. Well, they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I can't speak to all of that. However, my intentions with using the spray lacquer were good intentions. Figured it'd be a nice, easy, simple thing. I don't know what happened, if the can that I have is just bad or whatever, but I don't think it's supposed to look like that. All four of them look like that. I have no idea. So I'm going to go on to a different option. I'm going to sand off the first coat of the spray lacquer that I had just with some 220 grit sandpaper. And then I'm going to use some Danish oil. This is a cherry one-step finish, easy wipe on Watco Danish oil. Should be pretty simple. I'm going to go ahead and try and put 2 or 3 coats of that on using a foam brush. So anyway, I've put this off for, not put this off, but this has dragged on a lot longer than I had originally intended it to. So I'm going to go ahead and get to work, and we'll see what these look like coming up. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Of course stay tuned, because you're going to watch it anyway. Anyway, I'm going to get to work. I don't have the remote in my pocket. Okay, so that's another project in the books, and I have to be completely honest, this is probably one of my favorite projects that I've done on this channel, and not because of how it turned out. Not because they turned out bad, on the contrary, I think they turned out amazing. But because of the process that was involved in making these little display shelves, I learned so much. It was the first time that I got to use Danish oil. It was the first time that I ever resawed on my new bandsaw, and I learned a ton about using both of those things. I also learned that the spray lacquer that I got is not always a, hey, point, spray, and shoot, done type of finish, although I've used it that way in the past. So, lots of things that I learned, and if you're wanting to support the channel in a little bit more deeper way than just watching these videos, which is greatly appreciated, by the way, I'm going to be launching my Patreon here in the next couple of weeks, and I'm going to have a lessons learned video about this project and about all my other videos, just things that I've learned through the course of making. And if you want to support the channel, you can go over to my Patreon, which is just Big Luke's Workshop /Patreon. Whatever it is, I'll have it down in the description below for you to peruse if that's something that you're interested. No pressure. So with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started on the next project. In the meantime, you good folks, stay inspired, stay motivated, and stay safe. We'll see you next time.